We must believe that things end, things end at the right time. Things end, things end in due time. This time, it will be my time, yeah. In due time, in my time. I'm so glad that it's my time. Have you ever scrolled through your feed and suddenly felt behind in life, like everyone's thriving while you're just surviving? What if I tell you that pressure you feel to have it all together is rooted in something much deeper than just culture and it's actually robbing you of your peace, right? In today's episode, I'm going to be breaking down why comparisons make you feel like a failure, how to recognize when you've slipped into measuring your worth by others' achievements, and most importantly, what God actually expects from you. By the end, you'll see that success isn't about looking polished, but about living present and being grateful, like we discussed in the last episode. If this message hits home, don't just keep it to yourself. Share this episode with friends and family and those who you love, and maybe some those who you don't like, who's battling the weight of comparison. And if you're ready to keep building a faith that's rooted in gratitude and not envy, make sure to subscribe, like, and comment. Do all those good things for me so you don't miss what is coming next. With all that being said, welcome to the BIYG podcast. I am your host, Stefan Simmons. Believe in your growth. Let's get started. And so we want to talk about pressure to have it all together. So I think I want to do this backwards. I have a few points, just to help me stay on track. But I think I want to do this backwards because I want to hit a hard truth first that I think some people are going to wrestle with, and some people may or may not like, some people may not agree with. They may feel like the context isn't there. I don't know, to each their own. But I want us to think about Ecclesiastes. Is it Ecclesiastes 4 and 4? Every achievement comes from envy. All toil and achievement spring from one person's envy of another. And so this frames the culture and personal pressure to look successful as vanity and misplaced focus, right? And I mean, hey, in a modern society today, the struggle for comparisons and performance anxiety is very much there, you know, but most people don't realize or they won't say or connect themselves to this kind of sentiment because none of us want to label ourselves as bad people, sinners, right? Most of us reject that. We despise it because we don't want to feel the shame of it. But for me, this is one of the verses that has helped me to stabilize my mind. I've always been, thank God, confident and sure of what I wanted to do. And I've always wrestled with trying to do it the way other people do it because it just didn't come natural and it wasn't comforting, right? It was always like I was wrestling with it. But when you realize you don't have to do it their way, right? It may work, but if you trust God, the way God gives it to you will work also. I want to give an example. I said this in a recent podcast, but I was watching someone, a believer, and I guess they were talking about like in the terms of YouTube and how you create or gain viewership and stuff like that, how you attract people to click on your stuff, you have to create quote unquote confusion. And so to me that was something that hit me in a more moral issue kind of way where I don't want to do that. I don't want to confuse anyone. I would want to pique your interest to get you to watch what I do, but God is not the author of confusion. And if my father is not the author of it, I don't want to be a participant of it either. I don't want to benefit from it. I don't want to gain from it. Now, granted, if God confuses the enemy, that's a whole different story. But in my life, in my walk, I am to be at peace with all man. And some people may not connect confusion to peace, but I am to be a light. I'm to be a light, not cause discord, not cause people, not to manipulate people to watch anything I do for the sake of money, because that's what it comes down to. It comes down to the love of money, the lust of money. What will you and won't do for money? The pressures that we all face in this world, are striving. What will you do and not do for certain things? Right. And the limit is being pushed back so far for a lot of people, you know? And that's to each their own. I can only measure the speck in my own eye. But I wanted to throw Ecclesiastes 4:4 out there, and I will read it again. All toil and achievement spring from one person's envy of another. And so that brings the question, well, are any of us really walking in the purpose that God has for us? Or has it been motivated, quote unquote? We like to use good words, really. And this is something I will say I love that Myron Golden said, we stop calling things what they are, and so that's how they creep into our lives, right? We don't call an abomination anymore. We call it well, see, we call it a gay, and we call it uh strippers, and we call it all of this other stuff, right? We don't call what the Bible says a thing is what it was called anymore originally. And so that's why in our own lives, it seems like the lines keep getting pushed and blurred further and further and further, because there's just the loss of the value of what you're supposed to believe, right? And in a world where people make you feel like you're a phobic person, or whatever that phobic might be, because you have a thought, but I live by this. I don't care what you do, who you are, where you go. You deserve the right to life. You deserve to have your needs met, because to me, without the right to life and the liberties to be taken care of and healthcare and all this other stuff, I can't expect anyone, if I believe their life is going down the wrong way, if they were to die now, it wouldn't change. They wouldn't be able to see the goodness of God. That's a whole nother conversation. Anyway, I don't want to get on to that. But I'm just saying, we have to understand, are we really pursuing what God has placed in our heart, or is it driven by what we see? And, I don't want to challenge God, but I believe there are some people out there that are actually pursuing what God has placed in their heart. And I mean, when I live in a first world country, I live in America. And so opportunities are vast, resources are ever abundant, right? Excuse me, I'm sorry. Resources are ever abundant. But yet, I think that becomes the issue. That becomes the issue because we have all of these things, and our life is flooded with things that it becomes something that takes resident, not just in our physical being, but our internal. And so you can't think straight when you have all of these things, because now it's like, as it is in the spirit, so it is in the natural. And as it is in the physical, so it is in your mind. And to me, right? I don't know, a person can't have a life full of things and kind of be focused and centered on God. And I'm not saying things are bad. That's the thing. I'm not one of those people who don't know how to, how would you say it? Read the Bible. Money is not the problem. It is the love of money, the lust for money. That is the problem. The thing that brings a person to what you will and won't do for the money. That becomes the problem. One of my favorite moments in Proverbs, Agur, he was praying to God and he said, "Don't let me have too much and don't let me have too little." He didn't want too little because he didn't want to sin against God. Like I said in another podcast, poverty creates a window for so much to transpire in a person's life because they feel the need to save themselves. Whereas, and that's just not one, that's only one facet of what poverty can do, right? But then when you have a person who has the abundance, like Agar suggested, they forget about God because they seemingly realize they don't need God. They can buy what they want, that maybe their prayer life stops, slows down, or dwindles a little bit. They start to believe that it happened because of their effort and who they are rather than God giving them the know-how or the ability to do. It's just a way. And or even some people take their money and they start doing defiling things with it. So it's never just a one nuanced thing like, oh, this is what money does. It can do a lot of things. And this is what poverty does. It can do a lot of things. So Agar, he wanted to be satisfied. He wanted to be in a place where he needed God, but he didn't suffer. Because I'm going to tell you, poverty is a suffering, but being rich and not having God is a suffering. So pick where you pick where you want to be. Pick where you want to be. And honestly, the greatest suffering, even if we relay that back to the pressure and people, wanting to get there, but really my question is, do you even know where there is? And I say that maybe not having a reason, but I've seen a lot of people, they aspire to mimic someone else's approach, take someone else's blueprint to get the level of success they had, you know? And to me, I've never understood that. I'm like, you're one of a kind. Why are you trying to take someone else's approach, the plan, the way God gave to them, and utilize it for yourself? And then that brings a whole nother thing for me. I never understand why people try to package and sell that. What are you doing? And that's weird to me. And I'm not against business or people leveraging what they have, but you're I'm not gonna say you're selling people false hope, but you're selling people false identity. That was a blueprint for your life, not someone else's. But yet we buy into it because we're so thirsty. We fall short and we fall into the snare because we're not grateful. We don't trust God. We don't believe that God is going to get us to the place. We don't we honestly, some of us don't really think God's sufficient. God don't care about our financial standings. That's what it seems to me that's what a lot of us believes. But if you read throughout the Bible, God is the God who gives man success. If you submit your plans to God, he will give you success. Acknowledge God in all of your ways, and, and he will give you success. He will order your path. I don't, anyway, I mean, I just wanted to lay that out there. Like I said, Ecclesiastes 4 and 4. If you haven't read it, go read it. Introduce yourself to the book of Ecclesiastes and ask God to be with you as you read it, because if you're not reading it in your right mind, it's going to be heavy, but it shouldn't be heavy. It's a book of wisdom. It's a book of wisdom. There is a reality to this existence, and I love in Ecclesiastes how it differentiates life and chance, because I don't know when I came to this revelation, but God revealed to me life and death are not synonymous. They only share a space because of what man did. So because of existence, we have life and death, but life is not happening to you. And what people say, they say life is happening when bad things are happening. That's not life. That's death. That's death, right? But we have like I said earlier, we have a tendency of taking good things and placing them, slapping them over negatives so that for some reason we feel better about ourselves. Now, granted, that's not a moment to feel better about yourself because existence does get challenging. It does get hard. You get presented with some situations that, you know, it's tough, but you have to recognize the truth. That's not life. Life and life more abundantly. Life is completely separate from death. In this existence, we're all going to die. That's a different kind of death. but life and death are not the same. And so, you know, I mean, let's just get into some of these things. Why do you feel like a failure? Why do people feel like failures when they see others succeed? Because you forsaken yourself. You forsaken, I dare say, God, because God didn't create you to be someone else. He created you to be you. So measuring yourself to other people, or even saying, "Oh, I don't have it like they have it," or even going up to someone, and I've had this happen to me, and this is no disrespect to the person who said it to me, but I want people to know that they are worthy. You are worthy. I don't care what you see me do. Let it inspire you to believe God can do a thing through you, and I'm trying to word that the best way I possibly can, but there's nothing wrong with being inspired. But if you when you see me, be inspired to go to God. That's the only thing that I want to inspire. Inspiring people to believe that God can do it. God can teach them. God can help them. God can do it. Not don't I don't want to be don't be like me. Don't be like me. Be better than me, but don't even do that. Be you. Be yourself. Be yourself. That's really what I want people to get when they encounter me. But if you feel like a failure, it is because you're forsaking yourself. And it is also because you've made other people's lives, or even society's how do you say, mold of success or whatever, you've made that an idol. That's why you feel like a failure. Because the only time you should feel like a failure, quote unquote, is when you come short of the glory of God. And we all have fallen short and come well, we all have fallen and come short of the glory of God. That's the only time you should even feel like a failure. But even then, you should realize God wants you to get back up. And when I say failure, let's associate that with, i.e., you should feel, how do you say, a desire, a fire, and a challenging to do better, to be better, to get it right next time. Don't let it be the negative side of a failure where you stay down and you feel like a loser and you're never going to get it right. You are going to get it right if you try, if you make a decision and you put in the effort, right? But coming back to the point, that's to me, that's why you feel like a failure, because you're looking at everyone's life and you're looking at the mold and what society says it should be, rather than turning off your TV. And this is not for an extended period of time. However, first and foremost, we have to really genuinely acknowledge it's going to take a mindset shift. But I'm telling you, no matter how much a person works with you, if you do not believe what God has said, first and foremost, because we can say anything as human beings, but what you want to pay attention to is what the Bible said. That's what you want to pay attention to. Who God told you you are in your identity. And then aim for everything that God said you should be doing. Let that shape you. And then you want to go down to your individuality. What attributes, skills, talents, personality traits did God give you? You got to take inventory of this stuff. And I mean, I would say it makes me cringe when people say they don't know what they're good at. What do you mean you don't know? And I mean, yes, I say it in my mind. I say it like that because, and I hate to say this because some people are gonna feel bad, but I feel disgusted because I'm looking at a beautiful human being, another creation of God that does not realize what they offer. And so it hits me differently because I don't understand it. I don't understand it. I'm like, and I know we tend to undervalue certain aspects of us, and that also comes back correlating it to how does the world respond to it. But that's what we have to learn to cut off the responses. We're looking for the reward to come from man rather than it coming from God. But, you know, you have to take inventory and recognize, who am I? What do I bring to the table? And stop devaluing it based off of what somebody else is bringing to the table, or even the charting or the graphing system of value, quote unquote, that the world has made. I.e., let's use this. I wrestled with this myself, but I didn't really wrestle with it. It was just kind of like, it's something you recognize, but you don't realize it can be a hindrance if you don't get a hold of it. Food and art are two different things, right? You know, everyone needs food, but everyone may not need your art, and I'm not talking about cuisine or culinary, prepared meals. I'm talking about everybody's going to need food, even though there will be people who don't like certain foods, like they don't like tomatoes, they may not like this, they may not like that. But let's just say this: there are more people in the world who are going to need food than more people who are going to need your art. Now, there's one or two things you can do. You can recognize the truth in that, or you can let the enemy speak to you through that. Because the enemy would say your art doesn't matter because millions of people are not going to like it. But why do you need millions of people to like what you do? One thing that I began to recognize in this life is all you need is 10. If you can find 10 millionaires and you don't know where they are, but it's not about actual millionaires. It's about people who are rich in their giving, rich in their support, rich in their love, rich in their investing, rich in their, receiving, right? They want what you have to offer them. You need 10 millionaires. That's all you need to operate and give the value that God has given to you. But we look for a million broke people to support us rather than 10 rich people. I've heard that before. I knew someone and I presented to him. I don't know how the conversation came about, but I was like, would you rather have 10 millionaires supporting you, or would you rather have a million X, Y, and Z? And I get, in this world, in this digital age, a million viewers scales different from millionaires, but I don't know. You have to realize, I think some people, they want the attention. That's what I'm getting at. Some people want the attention rather than the effectiveness of what they do. I want to be effective, and I encourage you to want to be effective, right? And so, bringing it back, why do you feel like you're failing when you see others succeed? One, like I said, I feel like you have forsaken yourself, because if you realize who you are, you wouldn't look to the left nor right anyway. You wouldn't you'd be happy for them. You would be happy for them, because it's only really speaking volumes about yourself, which we all know that. I'm sure you even know that if you're asking yourself that question. But you have to get back to you. You have to flee the system of the world and get back to you. Get back to doing the thing that you love and doing it passionately. Living your life. And one of the things that I came to, I think it was about a few months ago. I don't think, and there's probably people in our lives who teach us this, but in schooling, you're not taught practical and important things. And I don't know about college, but from pre-K on up to high school, they don't teach you things that matter. I just recently learned the industrial age instituted schooling like that to program children to go work in factories. I don't know how factual that is, but that's what I heard. But even before I saw that in a video, I heard that years prior. But my thing is, children need to understand that where you are today is enough. If you work toward where you want to go, in time you will get there. But enjoy where you are right now. And that institutes such a peace once you actually understand it. Worrying about tomorrow adds nothing to your life. It will do nothing for you. But enjoying your family, enjoying your labor, enjoying your drink and your food, enjoying life, that's where you want to be. That is where you want to be. That helps and prevents so much of the obsessing over other people's successes and having to feel the need to see people going here and going there and taking trips. And there ain't nothing wrong. If I see somebody taking a trip and it's like nice and I like the pictures, I'm gonna like the pictures, but that ain't gonna influence me to want to go or feel some kind of way. I mean, I don't know. I am beginning to fill my life with doing rather than consuming, you know? And it's crazy because I've always done a lot, but the same rate I've always consumed a lot. And I realize right now, just right now, if I was to do more than I was to consume, if I was to shut down all of my consumption, which is I don't recommend because enjoy your life. Enjoy your life. You're not supposed to work 24/7. That's not what God intended, you know. I don't care what grinding hustle culture says. That's another reason why people feel like failures because they're not taking up the blueprint and the plan God has set up. God instituted, right? But I just recognize if a lot of times, like let's just say beyond the recommended amount of work that you should do in a day, if I was to fill that whole slot, that 12 hour, maybe 13 hour, 11 hour slot of work, and fill it up with the things that God has called me to do, ain't no telling where I could be, and cut out some of the scrolling that I might do at certain times or cut out some of the, playing and goofing around. You got to get serious about your life and you got to be intentional about understanding who you are. Once you find out who you are, once you find out what you like, once you find out, well, no, yes, who you are and what you like, you get closer to understanding your passion. You get closer to understanding your purpose and the areas of life God is calling you to because of the giftedness and the skill sets, whether they be hard or soft skills. You begin to perceive, believe, and receive the assignment from God, right? And so, I just want to say you're not behind. You're not, you will never listen. Okay. I hate to say this because you can miss opportunities. God can have something for you. And I want to say this because Samson died disobeying God. He was able to get it right before he died, but him not listening to God caused him to miss more time of his life and fall into a snare and a trap of the enemy. So I can't say whether you're behind in life or not, but don't think of that. Am I behind because everyone else is doing this and doing that and doing? You need to be asking God, am I missing the mark that you have set in place for me? Don't consider other people's striving when you're asking this question. Don't consider other people's livelihood and what they're doing and how they look. Forsake that and begin to ask God, am I doing what you're calling me to do? Are you allowing this struggle to come upon me, this pressure to come upon me because you're trying to wake something up in me? Are you trying to get rid of this slothfulness, this laziness, this ignorance, this arrogance? Are you trying to get it off of me so that I can, like I mentioned in the last episode, so that I can perceive that you're trying to teach me something? Because like I said, some people don't even know that their moment is trying to teach them because their life is so crowded and flooded with things. Whatever the thing may be, I don't know. But I want to say this, I don't know if you're behind in life. That is something you have to ask God. But I know in terms of other people, you're not behind in life. But in terms of your assignment and your dealing with God, you better go to him about that, you know. But one thing I want to say with this, Joseph, this is different from most people because people have to understand Joseph was put in situations that led him to the place. But the children of Israel, they kept denying situations that led them away from the place. 40 years they wandered, and God had to make sure all of the older ones were dead except for the two spies that believed God, which I think was Joshua and Caleb. Either way, only two of them could go. And I think that's honestly Moses couldn't even go in because God didn't want that kind of rebellion infiltrating the new thing because Moses disobeyed God in a simple instruction because he was angry. The word said, be angry, but sin not. And so he got angry and he sinned. God didn't want that. And I also believe God didn't want, because God knew Moses was about to die. God didn't want death going into death in a whole lot of sense. But rebellion is a part of death, whether people realize it or not. He didn't want that going into the promised land. So he had to let him see it because he was faithful through all that time. And God, I believe God is so compassionate and understanding. He understood why Moses did what he did. And that's why that one thing wasn't going to keep him from God. Because we all make a mistake, but Moses repented, I believe. I'd have to go back and read it because I can't remember at this point. But that's a whole nother conversation in itself. I'm just saying, you can miss the things God had for you because of your inaction, your unbelief, unwillingness, whatever. Don't let nobody lie to your face. You can. It can happen. But then there are moments, like I said, with Joseph, or even other situations that don't have to be hard or trying, right? But Joseph was tried, but he was still pushed further because God revealed to him something and he believed it. But yet, that thing caused certain moments to fall into place. The enemy was orchestrating these things to hurt and destroy destroy Joseph. But God protected him through everything. But also, Joseph wanting to live uprightly protected him. And I say that because if we look at the children of Israel, when Balaam was trying to put a curse on them, he couldn't put a curse on them because they were living upright before God. It was the moment when they failed to continually be believers, in a sense, that a curse was able to penetrate their lives. And so I don't know, like I said, you got to ask God if you're behind because only God knows that, and God can send someone to you that can confirm it or not, but you need to go to God first in everything. Encounter God first. And so, I wish I had a way practically to help you stop comparing yourself to people without saying just stop. It's a simple decision. It's a simple decision. When you catch yourself doing it, whether it is pathologically or whatever in your mind, or even with your words or even with your eyes, your lust, right? When you catch yourself, but you have to perceive that is actually happening. You have to be intentional and actually not subconsciously, but aware that this is happening. I am comparing myself right now. Let's say you have a thought like, I'm stupid. You have to perceive you just had a negative thought, something that is against the infrastructure that you are trying to rebuild, against the thoughts and the process and the laws and the ordinance, against what God is doing. The word says, cast down every high thought and every high thing, imagination that exalts itself above the knowledge of God. We have to understand there are physical things that happen in the world that try to exalt themselves above the knowledge of God. Then there are internal things that happen. So external and internal things that happen that try to exalt themselves above the knowledge of God. Your mind telling you that you're not capable, that you're foolish and that you're silly and that you're whatever, any negative thing that is against the knowledge of God. Because God said to, who was it, that he was Jeremiah, fearfully and wonderfully made, I think. And so in my infrastructure, in my system, I know if God could say it to him, God can also say it referring to me. Because if God knew Jeremiah in his mother's womb, and he knitted him together, God also did the same thing regarding me. Could at the least, but I believe did. So it is really 100% about your belief system. But no matter how much a person says it, if you don't choose to believe that this or take note that this is happening, you have to be cognitively aware. I think that's the right word to use. You have to just start paying attention. Stop going through life a loaf, however you say that word. Stop just foolishly, I mean, not paying attention to anything. Take note of your surroundings, what you're doing, what other people are doing. That's how discernment works a lot of times. You have to be able to recognize things. And so recognize when a moment comes up and you're like, "Oh, I wish I had that." And let's say you just saw someone else with it. Some people may not see that as a bad thing, and it's not necessarily bad, but you got to realize, like I said, no, well, like Ecclesiastes 4:4 says, all toil and achievement spring from one person's envy of another. So we have to realize there's nothing wrong with wanting nice things, but want it because God gave it to you to want it, not just because you want it. And so to me, even in comparing yourself to people, you have to first stop forsaking yourself, but then also be aware of the thoughts that you have. Take thought. And I would recommend sitting with yourself. Sit with yourself quietly and just begin to think things. Actively think and actively speak. Because let's say in the midst of you saying something good about yourself, something negative comes up, you need to verbally cast that down. Like we're going to stick with the I am, well, the I am stupid, right? If you hear that thought, I'm stupid, I need you to say, I am not stupid. Cast it down. And then say, I am intelligent. The counterpart to it, we need you to profess out of your mouth. It needs to come out of your mouth. And then not only does it need to come out of your mouth, you need to think it. You need to think it. But you first do need to tell your mind. You need to tell your mind what you said, because there are a lot of things as human beings we have authority over. One of them, ourselves. We control how we think, how we move, how we operate. Don't and listen, I'm not a doctor, so I'm not gonna prescribe or say nothing that, but I highly recommend that you stop letting people tell you what you are, and you start telling yourself who you are. And be honest. Don't be full of delusion and saying you black when you white, or you white when you black. You a dog when you're a human being. Don't be foolish like that. Don't say you're productive but you ain't did a task in 5 weeks. Don't say you're a singer and you ain't sung a song in 3 years. Be honest with yourself. You understand? Honesty is the one tool that will bring about deliverance. Other than that, you're creating room for deception, and a person who was deceived will never receive their deliverance. Because that's another that to me, well, that's another conversation. Anyway, um, and so I mean, to stop comparing yourself, it's an active work. And I recommend, like I said, you sit down, you begin to think good things about yourself, and then if any negative thought comes up, like I said, I need you to verbally cast it down. Say, I am not that negative thing, and then say, I am the counterpart, the positive thing, you know. And so for me, I think you also have to realize, if you want to stop comparing yourself to people, you have to realize what God expects from you. And so there's a lot of things as believers that are expected of us. But this one is closely related to the topic. And so I only picked this one. And it's one that says, this is the will of the Lord concerning you. 1 Thessalonians 5:18, and I'm just going to paraphrase. Give thanks in all things. That is the will of God concerning you. That is what God wants you to do, you know? Now, when God gives you a private instruction, that is also the will of God concerning you. But go through the Bible and see what is God's will for me, you know? But it's not just what says this is the will, because we understand God does not delight in fornication and idolatry. You have to pay attention to that stuff as well. But the reason I chose First Thessalonians 5 and 18 is because when you choose gratitude and thankfulness over your life, that seemingly it did it for me, will eradicate the need to look at everybody else's life. Or even if you don't need to, it will cause you to not care about what other people got going on, in the sense of, oh, that's nice that you have that, but you have your good thing too. You get, I hope that makes sense, because I just understand thankfulness is a blessing. There's a scripture in the Bible. I don't have it on hand, but it says that be thankful for what you have, worry for nothing, and ask for what you need. That's the paraphrase version. Then Christ Jesus will give you a peace that surpasses all understanding. I think I said that all wrong, but focus on this part. Be thankful for what you have, worry for nothing, ask for what you need. There is a reason why those three things were put together, and there's a specific order that they're put in. But I love that verse because I remember there was times where I would begin to start having these fear moments, and it wasn't anxiety. I'm not going to call it anxiety. It was fear. And so I had to start saying, literally regurgitating that verse, because it was in my heart at this point. Be thankful for what you have, worry for nothing, because fear and worry are almost literally the same, almost the same thing. Almost the same thing. But like I said, worry for nothing, worry for nothing, and ask for what you need. And so I had to start telling God, thank you for whatever the situation regarded. I was like, thank you for this and thank you for that. Thank you for everything pertaining to this moment. And then I had to say, God, I need this. And honestly, in a lot of those moments, I needed peace. That's really what I needed. It won't money or something else that was gonna fix it. I needed peace. The peace that surpasses all understanding. That's what I needed, because I understood fear was trying to attack me. It wasn't poverty. It wasn't sickness and death. It was fear. Now, it wasn't the manslayer. Let me say manslayer, because death is all of those things. But it wasn't somebody trying to commit homicide on me or me trying to commit suicide. It was fear. So I had to deal with that appropriately. And that's another lesson or another thing on itself, dealing with tactics of the enemy appropriately, because you can't be praying amiss and praying for things that don't have they just don't have no point. There's no purpose. It's not aligning with the situation. It's not relevant to you. It's not relevant for your purpose. It's not relevant for this moment, this event, this scheme that's transpiring against you. It's not relevant for the plan that God has placed in your heart. Don't pray amiss. Get in heaven and understand how to pray. I think logistically, strategically. You got to understand what words mean, but that's a whole nother thing in itself. But I mean, I know I've been kind of all over the place, and I hope that I've covered something in overcoming the pressure to have it all together, because who are you measuring your life to? And why have you forsaken yourself? I just I wish that we I don't know, it's just the hope of mine, that everyone has a great level of confidence I don't want anyone to be confident like me. Be as confident as God has given you the ability to be, because the ability is there. It's just the things of the world doing what it does, infiltrating, um, intoxicating, and just having its way, sadly. But with all that being said, I done talked 45 minutes. That's crazy. I thought I was starting to get better with my podcast episodes. Anyway, if you have any questions or you have anything that you want to say that I didn't cover, put it in the comment section. Because a lot of times with these kinds of moments, I cannot, no, none of us as human beings can address everything. There's nuances and there's certain things that, you know, if you was to cover everything regarding the topic, you would probably be sitting for years regarding that one thing, because then you start to realize how everything is connected. Everything in this life is connected. And so that would lead you down so many journeys and paths that you just don't have time to cover. So, yeah, like I said, if you have any questions, feel free to leave it in the comment section. Um, Share, like, subscribe, do all of that good stuff for yourself, because I'm going to try to be more proactive and more up to date on helping people grow. Um, I feel like that's my purpose, to get people to a place of, I guess, confidence. God said, well, the word says that He has given everyone a measure of faith. But I believe, like I said in another episode, the same way God has given everyone a measure of faith, I believe God has given a measure of everything. There are people who can sing, but then there's people who can actually sing. They're vocalists. There are people who can cook, but then there are people who are chefs. You know what I'm saying? And so I just believe I'm one of those people that God has given a level of confidence, and I want to share it, freely, but I wouldn't mind being paid. But remember to stay positive. Keep that with you, spread it wherever you go. My name is Stefan Simmons. If you didn't know, with all that being said, love yourselves and love others. Have a good one. God bless you. For real, for real.